And so what I could do is just take whatever singular idea I had and I could shoot that. And then I would just start editing it just to be like, what does it feel like? What is this? Let's say it was an intro, right? Like, what does this intro feel like? And then from there, it's kind of a lot easier to make a next step. Like, well, actually, you know what? This might feel better with a voiceover. Build these stairs and just see where they take me as I go. So I would film, edit, film, edit, film, edit. Keep my focus on one thing. I'm so distractible. And a lot of the time we talk about distraction as if it's just, watching YouTube or TikTok or whatever, or playing video games. But like, distraction for me, especially creatively, is often like, oh, I'm thinking about this video, or we're planning for this video. Oh, but what does that mean for this other one? And so it's very easy to take that kind of like creativity, the problem solving, the whatever, and get creatively distracted.
And it's what makes it so enjoyable to watch something you've created. Is it is so full of surprise for me. Like it's every single time it has layers that I just never could have predicted. And that makes it such an enjoyable thing to consume. But that doesn't help you in the process of making more of those kinds of things.
Right. Because I don't even really get to learn the lesson of like, oh, that part is the part that like surprised Levi. Let me put it in next time. It's like, wrong. You can't do that. You have to do a different thing next time. And it's a thing I both love, but is also just inherently unsustainable. Mm-hmm. You can't just offload that and let it do it by itself.
Mm-hmm. In the creator world that we live, when people aspire to making the jump to where the creating is the full source of your month-to-month income, this is certainly something that was something that I was trying to avoid because I was scared of what it would feel like to be there. And then now I'm there out of necessity. And that's I'm excited to have more of these conversations of how do we do that role well, because burnout is so prevalent, because we started a lot of this as a hobby, because a good way to ruin your hobbies is to make money with them. So I'm just very interested about this topic as it's going to continue to evolve, because I would not be surprised. And I think we might have talked about this in the first episode, where this might be the documenting of us no longer doing this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely.
As a job.
Yeah. But at least we'll have a platform to tell people like when I'm going to show the frogs and like where they can get frog tickets from.
Is there anything in your life that you do that feels so simple and elementary that you're almost embarrassed that you have to do it, but when you're doing it, it legitimately makes life better?
Like brushing my teeth? I don't know.
Exactly like brushing your teeth.
Okay, great.
Have you heard the habit pairing thing, where you pair two like a habit that you do automatically with a habit that you're struggling to do next to each other, so that way when you are doing the automatic one, you want to do the one that you're let me flush it out.
Brushing my teeth while I smoke cigarettes. Just kidding. I don't smoke cigarettes.
You just have you have a cut off toothbrush inside your cigarette case.
Yeah. As soon as you open it, it's just like, one for me. Oh, damn.
I have that, but I put my toothbrush in the same toothbrush holder as my kids, because like the kids' bedtime routine is automatic, but when I do my own bedtime routine, I just forget the steps. So it's so automatic when it's just right there. Like I'm brushing my kids' teeth. I'm like, oh, Dad's going to brush his teeth too. And I just pair them together.
You brush it with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if you were to tell me that the only way I'd reliably remember to brush my teeth is by doing something silly like that, I would feel kind of silly.
But yeah, I think I have all sorts of things like that, probably, where like I feel like the only way I do it is by a specific, set of tasks.
One thing that I've been trying to, I'm at the in between of analog and digital with it right now, but we've been on this theme of talking about getting out of where you live and changing contexts, so that way the automatic things that you're just doing that end up being healthy for you, you don't have to exert a lot of effort to think about doing them. Things like just packing your bag and leaving the front door to go to work. That's something that you just do automatically when you have to go to work, but there's a lot of benefits to your brain by participating in those automatic behaviors that don't require so much exertion to do. You know, like when you're putting on your running shoes to go running, your brain's already prepping. That someone told me that once, like, don't make the habit, I want to go for a run every day. Make the habit when you wake up in the morning, you put on your running shoes, because that's a lot simpler. And then once you have the shoes on, as you go through that process, you can be checking in with yourself. How do I feel today? Do I want to go on a jog? And oftentimes you do. Maybe baby is the wrong word, but like the elementary things that feel, it's more, I'm not so worried what other people think about catching me doing them. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm doing this silly trick to remember to brush my teeth. I'm not so embarrassed about that. It's more so, I mean, we're talking about it on a pod, like I don't care, but the conversation I have with myself, I feel like the conversation I have with my brain all the time is when I have thoughts, my brain's like, great thought, you'll remember that. Yeah. And then I don't.
And then you don't. I know.
So like,
I know.
There's another, who was talking about this? Oh, there was someone, I'll remember this again because I really like this idea. But if you do not, it was that, who's that recording artist that did the rounds on everyone's podcasts a while ago? The guy with the
recording artist?
Yeah. He's like a producer and he's super famous and he released a book.
Rick Rubin?
Yes. That guy.
Oh, okay. Sick.
I see his beautiful face and I do not remember his name. On one of the podcasts that I think he was on Rich Roll's podcast, and they were just talking about this concept of like, when you have an idea, write it down because you will not remember it. It's just a special moment then. And I think it's that conversation with myself that happens so many times throughout the day where I go, oh yeah, we're good, but we're not actually good. But I'm just trying to tell myself, oh, we're being just a normal human. We're good to go out about our day. But if you just pause and went, there's probably, based off your past experience, something you're forgetting right now. Mm-hmm. And then having a strategy of what to do in that moment. And the example that I'm thinking of practically right now is the packing to either leave to the office or the coming home. And when I'm like, I get ready to go, and inevitably my brain is like, sweet, we're ready to go. Let's go. And then I go out the door and then I check with myself. I'm like, do I have all my things? And I'm like, yeah, I feel like I do. Great.
Probably.
Let's go. Yeah. And maybe I'll even do like a very basic scan inside my head. But, this
is a great time to tell the folks about our sponsor of today's video, which is, just kidding. What's that? I feel like I'm getting ads for it all the time. That like Notable or something. It's kind of like a tablet.
Remarkable.
That's like an e-ink. Remarkable. Thank you. Remarkable. Sponsor of hopefully next week's video. Just kidding.
Are you saying like writing down lists on it?
Just writing things down. And also because I basically just use the Notes app on my computer and phone.
Same.
Which works great, except that every time I open my phone or iPad, there's like a million other things I could do.
Yeah.
Which is one flaw. But then my other flaw is being like, but if I just buy the Remarkable, like, then I'll, which is equally, if not more, problematic in my life.
I've had that thought before, but I hate opening up documents that have my own handwriting on them to reference.
Yeah. I think maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that one like auto translates your writing.
Yeah, I just don't trust
document.
that.
Yeah.
What I end up doing instead of I use text to speech a ton with Siri, and I do it on my Apple Watch, so I don't have to pick up my phone. And it's like it's such a silly thing that a multi-$100 device enables in my life, but it's a crutch that I've really come to rely on, which is there's two that I use all the time, and it's, hey Siri, make a note, and then you say the note, and then you add the punctuation, and you go new line, period, and you just.
There's a problem. Please try again.
Meanwhile, my HomePod's going off in the office, so I use that one all the time. But then I also use remind me of this. It will add it to my to-do list. But the key thing here for me, because I forget to check the to-do lists, is I do either remind me when I arrive home, because it's got my home address, or remind me at a specific time. And those two things are, and I've tried every productivity app in existence, to-do list app, but the built-in native ones work so reliably, like they just work every time for Siri input.
Especially if you're going to use, exactly, yeah.
Because so many apps, when you try to do the Siri input, they will do silly things like you need to unlock your iPhone, and it drives me literally, the friction just drives me mental.
Yeah, same.
And I've had so much success with those digital ones for about 5 years now. Like that's how I capture it. But like, here's the silly thing. Like I know that works to capture ideas when I'm out jogging, when I'm out walking. I know that creating a note works, but I will still do that thing where I go, oh, no, I'll remember this when I'm back at my computer, and I won't do the note. And it's not because I'm worried that someone's going to judge me doing Siri. Like I do it all the time. I don't care. I'm just literally lying to my own self that, oh, this time we will remember, and we never do.
Yeah.
And it takes so much extra work. And so this last time I taught a workshop for solo filmmakers a week and a half ago. And in the 3 weeks leading up to that, when I was just going about my life, I would have ideas for the workshop. And this time around, I actually made sure every single time I had an idea, I just took a note of it. And then usually I would make sure to say like a keyword in the note that was searchable, so that way I could distill down the notes to the relevant ones, because you got all these notes and then you're stressed to look at them. And I'd say like note for solo filmmaking workshop. And I'd say that at the end of my notes. So that way when I pull up notes on the desktop, I can search that in the bar, and then it'll show me all the recent notes that has that phrase in it. And then building out my presentation took me 3 hours. It was simple.
I have so many questions for you actually about like what that process looks like for you
Sure.
of on the go, kind of like organizing those thoughts into Notes app or whatever. But like, if you have any specific routes that you take from here's the thought to like eventually like moving forward with it, is there something that you do other than just like tell your Siri or whatever and then just hope you do it later?
That's probably where the biggest breakdown is, because I don't have great moments in my life where I pause and open those things up. And that's why
I agree. That's why I'm asking.
And that's why for me, the time-based reminders are critical, because I can sometimes go weeks without opening up the reminders app where a lot of my to-do lists are. And because I rely on my brain a lot to remember the important things, because that's like, it's right on the front of my brain. Why would I forget this? And so I'm trying to find a healthy balance here, because I don't want to have to, when I get into the studio and I want to edit, I don't want to have to be, open all our apps. That doesn't feel great to me for some reason.
Yeah.
I think what I'm going to try to do is set like a weekly time and try to pair the habit of opening reminders and notes. Maybe try to do that on a weekly interval with coffee, just down at the coffee shop, and just try to pair those two together. But that's a blank, because that is, and I've overcomplicated this a couple times where I get really nerdy about the folders to put the notes into. And then every single time it just devolves into chaos, and it's just notes. And so I think where I'm at right now is I'm accepting that the notes is just an inbox.
Yeah.
And that's all, and that's mainly all it is. So I'll occasionally like put PDFs in there, like user manuals and things like that. Scan documents into there that I want to reference later. So I have a specific reference folder. But I have like 8 other folders that I'm supposed to be categorizing into, but I never categorize. So for me, the notes, David Allen with Get Things Done, that he's like the original productivity guru guy that kind of swept through the early aughts and made a big impact on people. He preaches heavily on using an inbox, and in his system, it's literally like a paper inbox on his table that all the things you have to categorize go into. And then there's a point in your day or your week where you then sort it. Is this something for later? Is this something for now? Is this project specific? Is this for doing at home? Is this for doing at work? And that process of the categorizing, I really struggle to find a place in my life to do the categorizing. So I don't have a great solution. In my dreams, I go like, I pair in my dreams, and I've tried this where I go, Tuesday's the day where Tuesday's my categorizing day, but then I never do that.
Yeah. Levi, did you know that we never officially started this episode?
Welcome to the Make Stuff Club.
Yeah. We just started talking, and then we've been on a roll.
The show for dysfunctional creatives. That's what we are. Jesse and I are afflicted with many a dysfunction that we self-sabotage with. And wow, I'm free flowing today. We're just changing it up. I
like it.
I don't know if I don't.
I gotta move my space heater. It's blowing on my back, and I'm getting sweaty.
Getting sweaty back. That like the little droplets that collect between your shoulder blades.
I'm gonna blow it over towards Dave. Oh, I love that. A little small in my back. All right, what are we talking about today?
I think that gift of the little things is at least an opener for me, and I want to find a way to embrace more of those that actually work. And this is I don't know if we'll ever make an episode where I don't reference Casey Neistat. It might not be possible. And
I think we might. We'll get there.
His creative imprint on me, we probably have already, but his creative imprint on me I think a big lesson that I take away from how he goes about his studio and his life is the permission to do it in the way that works best for you. And I mean, there's like a OCD aspect present in the way that his stuff is organized. And I know him and his brother have talked about this before, where their upbringing was so chaotic. So being able to have control over it's kind of a control thing to be able to organize everything.
Oh, interesting. I haven't heard that.
In the way that they desire. I think it was I think Van talked about it in a podcast once, but the permission is like this, and this is the I guess the crux of it. The simplicity of, okay, the digital tools I really like, I rely on, but even the digital tools are a step removed from reality when I'm just going about life. So what I've been using in the start of this year so far, and I've got it taped up on my door and on my bag that I take back and forth to the gym, but it's like a plastic card, just like a baggage tag with a piece of gaff tape. And then on it in Sharpie, I just have the main things I need to remember. And it seems so silly, but it's happened 3 or 4 times already where I've walked out of this office, closed the door, and it's been locked and my keys were in it. It's like, I can't keep calling the building manager to help me get my keys. This is the 4th time in my first month here. This is in January, and this is silly. So now it feels, I mean, I've had people visit the office, but it feels silly. But like right at eye level, when I exit the door, there's a piece of tape and it says keys ?
That's really funny.
And
I love it.
My brain, as I'm leaving, will be like, yeah, we got the keys. Like if I just talk to myself, but that extra step of physically like involving my physical body with the finding of it. It's the classic pat all your pockets. Like I need to actually find them before I go. And then we're good.
Yeah.
And it's still so silly. And there's other things on the tape. It says door locked, phone, food, laptop, shoes, hat, AirPods, lights, gym clothes. And that's so silly, but by me participating in like looking at that list and actively getting physical with it, because if it just stays in my brain, the brain will do the shortcut to be like, well, of course we remembered all those things.
Yeah, we're a brain. What do you take me for? But no, I do it. Even when I leave the studio here, every time I'll like lock the door, and if I've driven, I'll get in the vehicle and I'll start driving, and right away it's like, did I lock the door? And I have to stop and go back and check the door every single time. So now we have like an automatic lock back there.
Yes.
And so I still like hit the button just to hear it go like, and I find for some reason that makes it easier for me to feel like I locked it.
Right.
Just like, I don't know if it's the sound or if it's just like that I'm doing something slightly different, but I will forget the key turn in the walk away every single time without fail.
Do you like so set life when people are doing like proper production and there's a crew, is there elements about that you enjoy I feel like set life is really, the people who are professional and good at it are really good at the dummy checks. And I love this when you're leaving a location or a hotel room and everyone's looking after multiple pieces of gear. It's very easy for stuff to get forgot. And I really, really like, everyone's got their bags packed. We've left the building. And when someone audibly says, hey, did we do a dummy check? And someone goes back into the building and checks every outlet and checks every drawer quick.
Smart.
Smart. Is there other things?
When I was shooting weddings, I would forget like battery charges at like, the bride's house in the morning or whatever all the time. It's so annoying. You get to the church and you're like, and you have to like send someone back. Or I mean, I've definitely left gear and been like, I guess it's gone forever. Forgotten tripods. I forgot a tripod and a slider once. And it was like weeks later, we got a call from the venue being like, hey, were you here on this day? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, is this your tripod? And I was like, I didn't even know it was gone. Thank
Right.
you.
And that's a layer that, I mean, I've appreciated from even before Casey was making the YouTube videos. This is the layer that I brought him up for, but he does something that I always kind of thought, oh, that's a little bit silly. And he even gets made fun of it for it, but he writes his name and what it is on everything. And then the stuff he travels with, if found, call this number.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm always too scared to do that because I'm like, what about resale value or something? Like Josh here at the studio is really good at it. He usually does it with stickers because it's a bit easier. Oh my gosh.
you know,
If let's see.
Right,
you're hiding your number out. I thought there was going to be a punchline once you moved your hand.
Like this right here for me, I now do that on my stuff, and I do think about resale value too. But then I suddenly realized that I don't resell a ton of stuff. I use it till I break it. Most of the things I like.
I know. Me too. It also makes it feel like I'm more interested in getting the things that I know will last.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like this, I want this to be a thing that I have for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, a good pair of IEMs is actually a great example of that, right? Because
you want to tell people what
good
IEMs
are fantastic. Yeah, in-ear monitor.
In-ear monitor.
It's basically better headphones, or not headphones, but earbuds.
Yeah, they're not headphones. They have multi-stage dynamic presence for a good sound stage.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
is there other
it's
things
dorky
from
stuff,
set life that you like? What are some of those? I don't spend time on set very often, but I know some of your studio mates, like Christoph's, he's a official DP, and he does. And Josh is always doing proper video shoots. What are some of the, like the set life things that you remember that are like those like that almost on the surface seem a little dummy, but I mean, these professional, highly creative people are just doing as part of the flow of making movies.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't remember. I've been out of it now for so long.
Okay. Let me prompt you. Can I prompt you with one?
Yeah.
Have you been involved in a lens change process on a cinema camera?
Well, okay. Yeah.
Describe what that looks like.
Well, I mean, it looks like there's like 14 people involved. Do you know what it looks like? It looks like the Little Rascals when they're trying to put out the fire and they're all in a row passing the bucket over. That's what that looks like. No, but actually, I used to run a business with Zach, a friend of mine, and our workflows for things like changing lenses, but also just like discussing information from across the room was impeccable. Like we had a full language for like, you know, like how tight are you? How many people? Is this a 2-shot, a 3-shot, a 1-shot? Is this like wide, medium, tight? Or like, can you keep rolling? I want to move this camera. So everything from like, we could swap lenses by like reaching to the other person's camera simultaneously and like swap them and then putting them on our own cameras and keep moving without ever talking. It was a very beautiful thing actually to get like so comfortable with like the processes that we had going like on these shoots that we could stop talking. We could just kind of like do them and work that much more efficiently. I don't know if I have many of those right now though.
I feel like those little things are where not that the behaviors are fully automatic, but that there is a process, that there is like some amount of steps that you go through in the same way that whenever you're going to set up a camera for a multi-hour take, your brain from the pain of having mistakes made in the past automatically goes, oh yeah, do we have enough battery life? Oh yeah, do we have enough recording? We do that now automatically because we've been the psychological pain of being burned with it so many times. But yeah, that's the classic thing that people who are getting into video run into. And it's the fun lessons that everyone just has to feel the pain of, is those moments where you
format the audio card or something like that, or you never hit record, or like I'm sure you've had this, like a lot of audio recorders, they have like a 2-stage record. Yeah. Right. So like the first time you press
Zoom
it,
H4n,
it's like,
oh my goodness.
Exactly. It's cycling the audio and I guess whatever, but it's not actually recording. I've done that obviously a handful of times, but it's a problem that I see still constantly. You know, if you look on any like videography forum, there's always someone like, no, for that very reason.
Did it buffer in the cache? Is there still a file somewhere?
Yeah. That's why you got a white out right on the top of the recorder. Like, did you hit the button twice? Mm-hmm. Is it actually recording? It's actually a pretty good idea to just put stickers like that on things.
Oh, I have on all my Atomus products that I use for recording the raw out of a camera. If you don't set the HDMI output settings right, you record raw with your overlays baked into it, and you're peaking and you've got this beautifully recorded image.
Yeah, that's awful.
But with overlays and audio meters baked over the image. So I have a sticky, I have a printed out label on the top of the monitor, R overlays off. And
how many times has that burned you?
Twice specifically. And the second time was the never again time. It's like, okay, clearly you can't trust yourself to remember. So
yeah.
And it's something that I've struggled with. You can never expect that when you're working with other people, if it's your project, they will care about it as much as you care about it. That's the given. That's why it's your project. Mm. But I have struggled with when you're on the game enough because you're activated and energized and you want to check and verify things. And when the people you're working with just they'll just do an automatic default answer without actually physically checking. Mm-hmm. And that's burned me a couple times and it infuriates me. So now I just set expectations with the people I work with differently, where I go, hey, I'm going to ask you how much battery you have left, and don't just say enough. Like, I know it's going to seem patronizing. I know it's going to seem like I don't trust you, but when I film my projects with you, I want you to check. So if I have the idea, do we have enough record media left and are we in the white balance? That's correct. Mm-hmm. Are we in the same? If I say, hey, are you in daylight white balance? And you just go, yes, I need you to actually know the answer.
Yeah.
And so it's so frustrating for me when someone else does that to me, but then I realize this is the same thing that, like, I'll do this to myself all the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, you just take the short, easy answer. Like, yeah, of course. It's the of course impulse.
Yes.
Of just like, I'm mostly sure, so I'll just kind of like roll with it. But I mean, that mostly sure, it's the same impulse. It's like, I'm mostly sure I'll remember this. I know this is kind of why we started talking about it, right? But it's like, well, probably not. Like learning not to doubt yourself, right? But to like actually understand yourself so that you can change things, knowing exactly how you are, right? So rather than saying like, yeah, I know I've hit record, I know I've double hit record, I know I've done all these things, like putting in processes that actually make you, validate your own confidence. And it's surprising how often your confidence is wrong. Or honestly, it's surprising how often once I start doing those things, like now I actually remember.
Do you have any times when shooting with Zach Driftwood, your brother, where you forgot, where someone verified something with you and you were like, yeah, you just went into automatic mode, but then that burned you later because you didn't actually check?
I'm sure we've done that before with things like offloading footage, because, we'd be each bringing 2 cameras, 2 audio recorders, like so many different memory cards at the end of a day to offload. So what we would usually do is we'd bring 1 laptop, 2 drives, 2 sets of things, because we would always offload before we even leave at the end of the day, most of the time. But on the odd time where it's just like, maybe I'm driving home, I'm like, oh shoot, you know what? We had that 1 extra pocket recorder that one speech giver had to wear. And so we'll like shoot a text, like, just don't forget to offload that one. And those things get lost.
Did you read The Giver in elementary school?
No, maybe. I don't know. I didn't read it enough to remember anything from it now.
When you said The Speech Giver, that just prompted that in my brain. That's one of those books that, when I reflect on reading books at a younger age, where I realized that the mental picture I was probably painting of the book was probably completely not what was actually written. And I want to revisit it because it is one of those classics. I feel like it's come up in headlines where like certain schools are banning it lately. And so I kind of want to,
gotcha.
I think there's like euthanasia in it or something. I can't remember what the banning part is in it, but now I want to revisit it to see the memories that I have in the 5th grade, I think is when we read it. I didn't
read books in elementary school and high school, honestly.
Well, by the time we got to middle school, the Spark Notes was a thing, and it wasn't when I was in the 5th grade. So in 5th grade, I couldn't use Spark Notes to get the summaries, but
you had to read The Giver in the 5th grade?
I think it was 5th. Yeah, it was 5th or 6th. It was, it might've been 7. But yeah, actually, in reality, it was probably 7. If we're being really honest, that would be a strange book to make a 5th grader read. Yeah, no, it had to. that would be wild. What were you saying though before I talked about The Giver?
I don't know.
You were on the wedding
question.
train thought. Well, and also what I love about, like, and I envy this about film sets, like coming back to that lens change process with like 14 people. I like seeing that process happen by efficient people, because yes, they could probably do it automatically because they do it 40 to 50 times a day. However, maybe the DP doesn't change lenses that much. But I mean, when I personally change my lenses, it always, especially in the field, it always feels like I'm on the dance of, okay, so a sensor's now open and I'm holding a lens, and then there's another lens.
Yeah. Which one are we going to do? Yeah. And then I'm always like putting away the one I just took off with no caps into some random bag. And then by the end of the day, actually caps, that's the thing that they'll always lose.
Yeah, I don't
always
use caps
lose them because I don't value them enough.
No.
And so
have you tried the
especially front
universal
caps,
rubber
but-
ones that are kind of like a contraceptive, but for your lens? Have you seen those?
I just use regular contraceptives for them.
Ripping open a package. Hopefully they're non-lube.
Yeah.
That would be that's
Yeah.
why Jesse's
Oh,
lenses
no.
are always well
Fine, I just
oiled.
like clear out the center. That's why I have such a beautiful vignette on the outside of all my frames. I couldn't get the lube off.
Did you see those TikToks going around during the hurricanes where there was a news anchor who had a microphone that was wrapped up? Did you see
I
these?
don't think so.
Yeah, it went quite viral because in the last hurricane season in the States, there was a news operator with a microphone, like an SM58 with a contraceptive over it, and these audiophile guys. Well, at first there was people going, "How silly is it that they did that?" And then there's people going, "Well, there's actually a reason, because it waterproofs it and it prevents the wind." And then other people were, "That doesn't make sense to me. Let me test it." And so there's all these like test videos going around of people saying, "How does it change the
Putting
sound?"
condoms on mic. How does it? I imagine it would cut a lot of the high frequencies.
Yeah, it doesn't sound great. It doesn't seem
Yeah.
like an effective method. But
I guess, I mean, maybe if it's, gale force winds and torrential downpours, it might sound better than that.
I feel like a
don't
bone
know.
conductor mic would be the way to go at that point. I wonder if we'll ever get to that technology. Have you tried bone conductor headphones?
Headphones? I've never used them, actually.
I impulse bought a pair several months ago, and I
Did you?
feel embarrassed about it. But
Yeah.
it's kind of
I'm not in. I just can't imagine that like we're going to reach fidelity from bone conduction that sounds anything like, actual.
no. The sound
airwaves.
experience is actually brutally awful.
Yeah. Okay, good.
What's okay about it is when you're on a trail in the woods.
Yeah.
AirPods in transparency mode sort of get there. One AirPod definitely gets there. Like if you just have one in.
For just spatial awareness. Yeah.
But it is, I think, yeah, it's I don't know. I should have returned them. They're not for, it's,
You didn't return them?
no, I should have though. I
Did you write your name? If found, please return to.
I didn't write my name on them at first, but then,
I thought your resale was going to be good.
yeah, no. But the audible checks that the first AC is doing with the whoever's assistant AC, second AC, like the assistant camera and the camera operator who's holding the camera, like that process of got it, and then he takes the lens off, he's holding it, got it, and then it passes to the next person when the next person, and they like make eye contact, and it's like a very ritualistic, like got it, got it, and then the lens is on. And then there's all these verifying to make sure, did you lock the locking ring on the PL mount? Like all these steps that it's such a basic part of the process that's one of the first things you experiment with as you're figuring out a camera is changing the lenses. It's the most basic thing.
Yeah.
And yet even the pros at the highest level are still audibly going, you got this thing I just passed to you.
Yeah.
And part of it is because, well, that lens is worth $40,000. And it's a rental, so it's a big liability if we drop it.
But there's also there's so many things involved in that process that theoretically could go wrong. Everything from, like dust on the sensor to like smudges on the lens to just misplacing things. Like those little steps can really slow down the actual workflow of the day everywhere from just like, well, now we're not on time to like, well, now all of our shots are ruined because there's, some giant smudge on the sensor that we couldn't see on the monitors, and it's in every single shot.
At that process of taking it out of the automatic to the physical space with you, I think that is the takeaway that I'm trying to learn from moments like that, where the moments where you make it physical and audible, where the brain wants to just simplify and make the connection and be satisfied quickly. Hey, we did it. Yeah, of course we got it. Of course I didn't forget. But the process of like bringing it into real life with me, with my words and with my pointing and my looking and my got it, like I got it. It's in my pocket. My phone is in my pocket. I promise you. Like those moments I think I'm wondering how I can bring those into my life more.
Creatively or just kind of everywhere?
Probably everywhere, but also when we're talking about the struggles of like how to make new videos that we like, that's definitely a layer. Like what aspects of this could be more physical and automatic instead of just relying on the brain to be the supercomputer to figure it all out.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's something about the Post-it notes on the whiteboard of planning out the structure of a complicated piece that is, or more practically, and this is what I see you put into play, is instead of just building the edit in your head as you're making the video, you actually build the edit as you're making the video. Can you explain this?
Well, man, I haven't done as much of this lately, but this was a process I used to do for every single video. But part of this was facilitated by the fact that I was really only ever working on one video at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I could do is just take whatever singular idea I had, whether it was for like an intro or just some like random effect in the video, and I could shoot that. And then I would just start editing it just to be like, what does it feel like? What is this? Let's say it was an intro, right? Like, what does this intro feel like? And then from there, it's kind of a lot easier to make a next step. Like, well, actually, you know what? This might feel better with a voiceover. And suddenly like you add a voiceover and now you're like, oh, you know what? This kind of feels like an infomercial, or this kind of feels like, and you can kind of like build it step by step by step rather than trying to like imagine the staircase and then climb it. It's more just like, I'm just going to climb one at a time and, you know, build these stairs and just see where they take me as I go. So I would film, edit, film, edit, film, edit.
How many days
then,
would that be
you know,
across a day, or would you span multiple days with that process?
Multiple days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never across. Usually just one film, maybe one edit
Mm-hmm.
in a day. And then when I come back into the edit, like if I was stuck, I'll either try and like solve that problem or figure out like what would I need to shoot to solve that problem. And that's where I would start from. And then do that. I haven't done a lot of that lately, but also haven't done a lot of videos lately. So I'm gonna guess those are correlated.
I was always
Possible.
impressed by how finished you would do that first. So let's say you film the intro, and there's one specific one I'm thinking of where you threw this jacket shot, and we did it over and over and over again, and then you brought it to the edit and you placed it in, and you built out the intro around a song with your hand-drawn animation coming on, and basically how you edited that in the first pass was very close to how it played on the final timeline.
To what it ended. Yeah. I usually edit to completion.
In the as you build it in front of you?
For the most part. Like I'll come back across and, you know, slowly tweak things. But the other thing that most of my editing has is I almost always start from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
At least I'll do that a lot, right? So even if I'm working at the 4 to 5 minute marker in a video, for me, like, sure, that might look good while I'm watching it, but in the context of the whole thing might just be awful. Or the beginning actually needs a slight tweak to make more sense with that, you know, new segment or scene that I've just put in. So it's a very like back and forth massaging it together as I build it. But generally, it's not the kind of like lay it all out, build the structure, like build the skeleton and then like put on the flesh and then infuse it with some blood. It's much more like, I don't know, like evolutionary biology. It's just like slowly taking form rather than like a bunch of pieces just like coming together. I just find it like, I find it easier to work when I like the thing I'm working on. Mm-hmm. And so something as simple as like a color grade, like I will not edit footage that's log. It just
never.
looks like garbage. So even if I'm just slapping a LUT on it or something like that, I have to do that before I can edit. And sound is usually the same way. Like if every time I'm watching it through, if there's like an annoying, background sound that I know will get removed, I have to deal with it now. And maybe it's because I know a little bit of the like, I'll remember later part of me won't. And so I try and take care of as many little annoying things as I can when I have them in front of me, because I won't remember them later. And I'm not that good at writing down notes. Maybe I should get better at that. But yeah, maybe that's what I should do for the next video. We've talked about this like personally, where I have like, I don't know, 5 to 10 half-made videos right now. Like some full intros that are shot and edited, some like bodies, all that kind of stuff. But because I've been working on so many, I feel like I haven't had that same luxury of like, edit. Oh, what does this need? Shoot it. Edit, shoot it. Because it's much more like my brain's thinking about a lot of projects. And that's something that, especially this year, I really want to try and like get away from. Because I just found out that is not where I thrive. I think I liked the idea of being someone who could be like, I have a series I'm working on and I'm going to make 6 episodes and like, kind of draw it out into this bigger thing. But at least right now what I'm finding is I get very quickly like overwhelmed by the size of something like that it can be debilitating. And for a lot of people, it's like, okay, so just do small steps, right? Like kind of chip away at it and eventually you'll get to that. But I find that doesn't currently work well for me. So I would much rather just be like, what is the one episode? Like maybe it's not a series. Maybe I just do one video on the topic. And if I want to do more later, great. But like, I just need to stay in a singular place, like keep my focus on one thing. Because I'm so distractible. And a lot of the time we talk about distraction as if it's just, watching YouTube or TikTok or whatever, or playing video games. But like distraction for me, especially creatively, is often like, oh, I'm thinking about this video or we're planning for this video. Oh, but what does that mean for this other one? And so it's very easy to take that kind of like creativity, the problem solving, the whatever, and get creatively distracted. And it's not even a judgment call on that. I can imagine a world in which your best ideas come from that creative distraction. But for me, it's more often a crippling, a debilitating distraction, because I don't ever get back to that first thing. The like, I don't remember the thing that I wanted to do in the first place, because I actually do like mentally, I enjoy the like talking about this project. Now we're talking about this project. Now we're like, I find that satisfying. And it definitely gives the illusion of like, I'm getting things done, right? Because I'm kind of like building this big mind map, but I'm not really actually chipping away towards the big mind map. I'm also not working on a singular thing. It just feels like I'm being productive. And that's not ideal right now.
I remember in Hawaii, you were talking about that, the pulling on multiple threads as you're on one thread, and how frustrating that can be. And like, how do you exist in that space while still being able to gain the benefit from that? Because that's a superpower that is very helpful in a lot of ways, where you're not following just a linear train of thought. You're following an experience of thought where things are able to attach from all over the place. But then how do you make sure that you're still creatively centered? So on the current idea, you're making something that you still like.
Yeah.
Or finishing it in the first place.
Like what you had described before, especially about like a lot of the videos that I don't know, maybe made a couple years ago, let's say, that had more of that like film edit, that kind of thing. That was a process where it actually wasn't linear. It wasn't just like, I'll do this and then I'll do that. Like a lot of the time it would have an idea of like, oh, it'd be so funny if at the end of the video, this would happen, right? And so that type of working often allows me to feel like I'm doing that like scatterbrain, like what if this, what if that, what if that? But because it's all in one project, we're still actually, adding to the pile of completed work in order to make that, versus when it's, throwing it into multiple piles, because then my brain starts going like, oh, where should I keep those piles? Have I organized the piles properly? Rather than what is this pile? In this metaphor, the piles are, I don't know, progress towards a video. Eventually it's a mountain. I'm not sure.
Well, that example of the piles, that's really close to one of the ways that ADHD was explained to me that really clicked was a person who has a neurotypical brain, when they have new thoughts, they're like Post-it notes that are falling down. And the brain knows as the Post-it note is falling where to put it somewhat automatically. So the thought of, oh, hey, 6 months from now, we have to do our taxes. The non-ADHD brain is somewhat capable of knowing that thought is there and kind of like directing it down the sides of the mountain of this is for later. This is for now. This is in the moment now, and kind of pushing them into the different categories with a somewhat automatic, like the conscious brain is able to do that, where the ADHD brain can be categorized or described as when the Post-it notes are falling, each one needs to be checked because it might be important.
Yeah.
And so this one's falling, like you have to spend the time to read it, and then you put it down and you try to, there's just too many falling at a time, and there's very little automatic sorting going on. And that is very frustrating when the task you're currently working on would highly benefit from being able to push those things to automatic categories while you are doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Whereas we end up like just collecting them all out of the air and then being like, does this make a flip book? Or no, I better make one. And then later you're like, this flip book, I guess I don't need that. And then you throw it out. And now 6 months later, you haven't done your taxes because you threw out the Post-it note.
So I've heard you now say a couple different times across the past months, and even in December, that was a big thing we were talking about, of struggling to know how to make videos right now. Mm-hmm. If you were to try, as we go into the next weeks of the year and the next months of the year, where would you place yourself where you're currently at in your making? Are you in between stages? Are you currently creatively frustrated? Are you just making it by? How would you paint the picture of where you're currently at?
How would I paint that picture? I don't know. Not great. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's almost a certain comedic element to the fact that this podcast is called Make Stuff Club, and I've been making so few things lately that aren't like making my office a different color or something like that.
But that's beautiful, by the way. I mean, that is like to be in a place where you're unsatisfied. I think so many of us find ourselves in that spot and feel so alone in that spot. So I just want to affirm you, even like the process of acknowledging, hey, I'm not liking this. Like, thank you for sharing that, because I think not everyone would even know that from the outside, regardless of the lack of uploads coming in their feed. That's not always clear.
Oh, absolutely. Like, if I think of all the channels that I'm subscribed to on YouTube, I never, unless it's someone that I'm watching daily who's suddenly not posting daily, I couldn't tell you how many videos like Maddie Hapoya has made. I probably could, because it's probably 100 or something like that. That guy makes a lot of videos. He's so consistent. But yeah, you're right. The average person, you really have no idea what that looks like for them. And right now, it's just like a very frustrating one for me. Isaac Johnston. Mm-hmm. I had a call with him recently, and I kind of wanted to pick his brain on this. And I was just like, hey, can you just give me your honest feedback on this problem? Like, if you've related to it, or if you can like see my situation more clearly. Because, and I guess what I want to paint out here first is the actual, maybe I would call it a fear, right? And I'll ask your question on this too, and maybe we can have Isaac on sometime to talk about this, which is, I have this fear that video making was an obsession. It was a hyper focus. And I'm using past tense words because it doesn't feel that way right now. So I have this fear that where I am now is a result of just like, I'm just not fixated on it. It's not the thing that obsesses my brain. And because it's not the thing that obsesses my brain, it's a bit of that like out of sight, out of mind. And there's kind of two ways I could look at this, right? Because on one hand, I can just go, it's a job, right? It makes sense that I'm not always going to go like, and be like hyper fixated on, the joy of creation, specifically the joy of video creation always. The other thing that I feel like I need to or want to consider or am afraid to consider, I'm not really sure, is like, what do I do if it's just the way that I have moved on from all sorts of hobbies in my life? How would I know if that was happening with my relationship towards video creation? So part of me wants to tell you some of the advice that Isaac gave me, because I actually found it.
That's profound. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more of like an existential kind of question on the topic. So I'm curious to know if I should lend in some of Isaac's insights, or if this would be like more of a fun thing to bring him on to chat through like what his relationship to that problem was and what he found really helpful, or if I should just tell you now.
I mean, you can tease us now and then we can bring him on. We can do both.
Well, I will. Yeah, well, let's do both, because he could articulate it in far more words than I could. But I will say that he was right on the money, which is he basically said like his lack of boredom was becoming extremely creatively frustrating. So basically like that, he found that he was always entertained, like always had something to think about, listen, do, watch, whatever. And when he's in a period like that, it's so much harder to then switch your brain to like, well, now what am I going to do? Especially if those things that you're like consuming aren't in the field of video. Because I'm pretty sure, I imagine Isaac has ADHD. I can't remember if it doesn't really matter.
I think I've specifically talked with him that if he doesn't own that label for himself, he has tons of overlap. So we've definitely talked about the topics and the things he relates to. I don't know if that's like something that he carries for himself, but he certainly relates heavily.
So he, without getting any insight from me, like the truth is like I am very good at, I don't even want to use the word distracting myself, because I think distraction inevitably or like invariably has this kind of negative connotation where it feels like this is a bad thing. But I don't think that's necessarily the case, right? Like I think you should enjoy watching movies. I think you should have hobbies that you enjoy, like losing yourself in. I don't see that as a negative thing. However, I think a lot of what I've done over the last like year or 2 years or whatever is like try to get really good at that, at not just seeing my life through the lens of content or video creation or work or something. And like, how do I just enjoy things? I've gotten really good at just enjoying things to the point where like, I'm usually like in the morning when I'm making coffee and like getting ready to come here, I'll have podcasts on all sorts of things. Like I have very little just actual downtime. And that is something that's certainly different now than it was 5 years ago or whatever. So after speaking with him, I did get really interested in at least the potential of being like, what would happen to my own creativity and to my own like ability to output this kind of stuff if, for a week, for a month, whatever, if I was just like, screw it, let's see what a non-consumptive brain feels like. Not in a, this is where I want to be forever. Not in a, like, my goal is to be someone who only consumes 7 minutes of content per month or something like that. But as an actual experiment to just be like, yeah, what does it feel like? Does it feel the same? If it does, cool. Don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
If it feels better, like I imagine at the very least, there will be some temporary pros to that, but I don't know. It's one thing to know, like, I should probably do this. It's another thing altogether to do it.
Yeah, because your question of have I stopped hyper focusing on this because it's time to move on to the next thing to hyper focus on, is the only reason why I liked making videos and was good at it, because it was novel and new and I could be creatively engaged at a certain level that maybe I just don't have that anymore. Or is there a couple layers going on in other areas of my existence that if we looked at changes in those areas, it might reinvigorate some of that fire? Maybe. But it's like, you can't know with certainty.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to like look at some of the potential problem areas, and that's, I think, coming back to, do we have control over our entertainment or is it controlling us? I don't like the idea that things have control over me. So the story I'm going to tell myself as I'm consuming and trying to get that interesting nugget from the sources that I go to get the interesting nuggets, instead of sitting in the dead space, my brain is telling me we are choosing to do this. And it's not about embracing a victim headspace, but it's acknowledging I don't think I have the self-control right now to stop.
Yeah.
And that's kind of terrifying. And I can just, it's so strange to, without question, be able to observe the periods where I've removed that quantity of unsolicited dopamine discovery in other areas that has unquestionably made an impact on the areas of my life that I care about, like creating. But it's not as directly connected one-to-one as, if I stop doing this, I will suddenly be more hyper-focused in a way that I enjoy. Are you going to try? Are you going to try to slow at what stage are you at in the decision of slowing? Because would you describe it as consumption, or would you describe it as like mining for? Because I mean, yeah, chucking a podcast on in the morning isn't necessarily searching for a dopamine hit, but I almost think of that behavior as slightly different than an app experience. But do you think of those differently?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't think I would, at least in like practically in my own usage, because I'm not even all that concerned about the dopamine part of it necessarily. Like I'm just thinking about it more as like actual enjoyment. But also the other thing is that like typically the things that I'm going to be like consuming, whether it's like videos, essays, podcasts, whatever, are going to be on whatever other hyper focuses that I happen to have. And I generally have like a few small ones at any given time that I'm like trying to learn about. And then usually one that's like borderline like haunts me. And there have absolutely been times.
Treadmill desks are one for me right now. Yeah. I've been researching walking treadmill desks for underneath my standing desk, and it's bad. So
you can get pretty cheap.
Well, it's bad that I'm fixating on a solution. It's not a helpful outlet right now.
Yeah. Yeah. But I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. So, my question, I guess, that I'm trying to like tease out question. I don't know if it's even a question. Okay. Let me try and find this here, because part of what we talk about in this is like, how do we find these like practical habits to like make these harder things easier, right? The like tape on the door. Do you have your keys? That kind of stuff. And part of me wants to figure out, how do I apply that mindset to my creative work, right? And you see a lot of people who get very good at like nailing down a style and a workflow so that they're able to do like, hello audience, this is what you expect from me, let me turn it out. And they can do that time and time again. And I'm not knocking anyone who does this, right? Like probably the greatest YouTubers ever have done this. Like they find a format and they stick to it. My worry is like, I don't know if I like doing that. I don't know if I'm even all that interested in ever nailing down like a style or a technique and then sticking to it. Like part of that sounds like prison to me.
Yeah, that's the end. And this is why I lament for you so much when you're trying to come up with new ideas, because it's unfortunate, but your style literally is the the antithesis of that kind of making. And it's what makes it so enjoyable to watch something you've created. Is it is so full of surprise for me. Like it's every single time it has layers that I just never could have predicted. And that makes it such an enjoyable thing to consume. But that doesn't help you in the process of making more of those kinds of things.
Right. Because I don't even really get to learn the lesson of like, oh, that part is the part that like surprised Levi. Let me put it in next time. It's like wrong. You can't do that. You have to do a different thing next time. And it's a thing I both love, but is also just inherently unsustainable. Mm-hmm. At least like sustainable in the terms of like, it's not, you can't just offload that and let it do it by itself. Mm-hmm. It's, you can't even really offload it to like another person, I don't think.
Do you think, I wonder for you almost, I keep going back to using the creating of videos as an outlet from something else that's more boring. And I do wonder if that's just the better setup in general for someone like you, where if there's just a staple behavior that you need to do as your day job, and then to procrastinate from that, you can do all the hype, like the way that you're doing. Well, you haven't uploaded many skate videos lately, but you've been building that into your current life where I don't think it should be called procrastinating, but there's a staple main thing that you're supposed to be doing, which right now for you is making main channel uploads, because that's where a majority of your income comes from. And then it's fun to procrastinate that with these skate videos that make no money. Mm-hmm. And that's the trippy thing about using your creativity to make you money, is that I don't know what setup would feel life-giving where you could find delight in the side activity. Like, do you think that your creative outlet of making full-length videos, is there a way that could be the side thing to a main thing? Or is it just figuring it out as a main thing?
That's a good question. I don't even really know what kind of main thing it would be, though, Like, I mean, like if it was the main thing, like how it is now, how it's been, right? Then we're kind of stuck with the problem. If the main thing is like something else, it's hard for me to just, envision that, because I don't know what that other thing becomes, right? See, I have this such.
Sorry, I was going to say, I would, I feel like if someone just followed you if someone was in charge of making you normal videos where you didn't have to make them, I just feel like that would work. I feel like that would work for where if someone just once a week made a normal video with you, and that was just the staple, like anchor activity that you did throughout the week, and they were in charge of making the edit work, they were in charge of the upload. Or they were, and whatever that, it could be educational content. It could be just, I just feel like, I just lament that so much of it has to come from you internally, because that's where so much of the turmoil is. Because people would, and we talk about this often, but people would love to spend more time with you. They would like that. But you don't want to be the person to make the things that they're spending time with at that lower level of creativity for you.
Yeah.
Where there might be some person like D-Rock in their original days of following around Gary.
Right.
I'm sure he got such a kick out of pumping out that following the day in the life of style stuff. Mm-hmm. Sorry, that's a complete tangent, but I
mean, I would love to hear from like anyone, even what, our 8 people listening to this or whatever, or 80, I'm not sure, like from other people that, especially people who work in some type of creative field, whether like you've got an Etsy shop making pillowcases or whatever, people that have had this type of struggle of like, how do I, as someone who loves the creative aspect of it, how do I make it sustainable when the sustainable like routes feel like they are less creative? I would love to hear from more people that have like grappled through that, the balance of like, I mean, the economics of it for sure. Like, how do you make it a good business? But also not even just that, like just like the mental sustainability of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know, maybe it's that, maybe you're right. Maybe it's the D-Rock route, or maybe it's the skateboarding route, or I don't know, maybe I go to school and I become a zoologist. Because I went to a reptile night recently, a frog showing, and it was so fun. And I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to show people frogs from now on.
Meanwhile, to enter that field, you're competing with the individuals who, from the age of 2, decided that's what they were going to do with their life, and you're trying to come in later in your life and join that field.
Yeah, but Levi, this is where hyper-focus just like is the superpower. It's like, guess what? I'm about to absorb 10 years of biology information in so 4 days.
It's so true.
I am going to burn myself into the ground and know everything about frogs, and then just be like, I'm so sick of frogs, you know? Like, there was a time when they were so creatively satisfying.
My friend Scott from Vancouver Island, he used to run a farm, and that was his full-time thing. And he had contractors or workers that would help him run the farm. And in the past 4 years, he's transitioned to full-time, primarily mountain bike filmmaking. Mm-hmm. And he uploaded a video on his channel lately where he's just talking about he's kind of lamenting the loss of the farmer life and that tension of it was impractical because the farmer life required him his full calendar. He couldn't take off for 5 days and have the farm still run and be okay. Like, he needed to be there practically. So there wasn't a world where he could keep being a farmer and making videos and allow his farming to be the staple activity. Because I think I can't remember if he had said it in this way, but I had left a comment on that video where I say often to my wife, Janelle, man, I wish I could just go dig a hole today. I really like physical labor, and I did a lot of physical labor jobs earlier in my life. And I think about some of these Hollywood directors that kept their day jobs even as they, and part of it's that scarcity mindset of like, they don't want to feel like their next movie has to make their career, so they keep the day job. But in the creator world that we live, when people aspire to making the jump to where the creating is the full source of your month-to-month income, this is certainly something that was something that I was trying to avoid because I was scared of what it would feel like to be there. And then now I'm there out of necessity. And that's I'm excited to have more of these conversations of how do we do that role well, because burnout is so prevalent, because we started a lot of this as a hobby, because a good way to ruin your hobbies is to make money with them. So I'm just very interested about this topic as it's going to continue to evolve, because I would not be surprised. And I think we might have talked about this in the first episode, where this might be the documenting of us no longer doing this. Like,
absolutely,
as a job.
Yeah. But at least we'll have a platform to tell people like when I'm going to show the frogs and like where they can get frog tickets from. I don't know. I'll show them on your sailboat adventures or something.
I love that. Can we keep exploring this? Can we?
Yeah, we can keep exploring this.
I'm grateful that you're opening that layer, and I know it's challenging to want to keep going there without having concrete solutions, but I like that we're talking about it.
Agreed. I'm also interested, not now because that's too much pressure, but I'd be curious to do like 7 days or 2 weeks or whatever, where it's like, I'm going to pull out all, whatever consumptive things for the experiment. And then I'd love to circle back with you on its, effectiveness. I just don't want to do it now, because then I'm making a commitment that I don't feel like I'm doing right now.
Can I get you to make a small one?
We'll see.
I think Tim Ferriss talked about this, but when you're in a lineup, or when you're in the moments where the twitch is there to fill that space, just pick one space that you fill currently and just try to avoid that one space. And
like pooping or something.
Honestly, that's a good one, because I know that you definitely pottygram a lot.
No, I was saying when I'm in line at Starbucks, I shit myself.
Instead of going on your phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're right though.
Not that
a lot
one.
Of pottygram.
But I've been trying this. Okay, I despise being in a lineup, and so I've been trying to like exercise the stoic principle of controlling just what I control in myself. And I feel these emotions happening when I'm in a lineup that I can't stand, and I just feel like it's like what would it look like to, instead of pulling out the phone and just doing all the noise creation, what if I just like found a way to be present in this that wasn't creating suffering for myself? And so I've been trying that in lineups. Would you be willing to try that for a little bit? What lineups are you going to find yourself in? Maybe that's the other question. When I go to the post office, that's when I'm in lineups, and I can't stand it.
Honestly, actually, a better answer is probably actually for me is like my actual walks, like especially because we've talked about the commutes lately. But I'd be curious to see what just changing that looks like, because I'm very podcasty on my walks. Like them a lot. No shame on podcasts, but I can imagine that like I don't need 4 hours of them a day or whatever. Or honestly more sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Maybe
love it.
And if that feels too frustrating, doing a coin flip before so there's like, hey, heads or tails, do I get to listen? I think that is a principle it keeps the delight in where it's a possibility, but it's not a guarantee.
I'm going to put a coin on the back of my phone or something like that. Anytime I'm in line or like go to the bathroom, just. Yep.
Well, I tried to look into a coin I could put on a necklace. Yeah. And all the coins were just like too silly, too heavy. And then when you put a necklace through it, it turns it sideways. So then you have to get that extra clasp to go around it to then hold it straight. So that way it's flat against you. And then, and then the coin's like weighted funny. So then when you go to flip it, you have to take off and I realized, I think I'm really overcomplicating a coin flip right now.
Yeah. You know what though? I bet everyone listening is like, hey, who among us hasn't struggled with coin flips like this before? And why the jewelry making process of coin flipping changes the probability outcomes of my creativity.
In this crowd, there's going to be at least a handful, and that's beautiful.
Yep. It is so funny how like that really is the impulse right there to be like, oh, what if I flipped a coin? And then right away going, what are the ways that I could make this coin flip process more interesting? I could make a necklace and I could drill it sideways, but then it goes forward. And so I'm going to have to fix that. And then suddenly you're like, you know what I should do? I should look this up on my phone while I go to the bathroom, like how to make optimal coin flipper.
And then you're 6 steps deep on a different thing and it's just chaos.
Yeah. But by that point, at least you've probably like ordered an Apple Watch Ultra or a standing treadmill desk or something.
I swear, cool. The next podcast, you see me here and my head's just bobbing a little bit. And then you hear the motor.
I call you out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely call you out.
Love you, Jesse.
Love you too.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Make Stuff Club. We've got a video version of the podcast on YouTube. And the benefit of that, even if you listen to the audio versions, is that we've got highlights that we're going to be uploading there. It's kind of short, bite-sized little nuggets to contribute to your week and your creative journey. Our theme music is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. This has been this episode of the podcast, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.